Hello, everyone. This is Margaret Manning with 60 and Me. This is the place where women over 60 come to be inspired. And as we get older, we start looking for things at a deeper level in our lives. We start making connections between what we did in our past and what is ahead in the future, what our purpose is. And my guest today is Carol Orsborn. She's going to talk to us about this topic of spirituality and aging. And Carol is an author. She's written over 21 books. She is the founder and editor of Fierce with Age, which is a digest of boomer wisdom. It's a great site. And she's going to talk to us today about spirituality and aging. I'd like to welcome you, Carol.
Thanks, Margaret. This is wonderful to spend this time with you.
I'm really, really glad you're here. There's so many questions that we've got around this topic. As you know, we have a community of women, 60 and Me, about 43,000 now in all around the world. And I don't think there's a woman in this group who doesn't have a sense of confusion or a little bit of confusion about what's next. You know, we're 60 years old. We've had families or not. We've done all kinds of stuff. But what's really the meaning of all of this? And I would love to ask you for your insights, just to start with, on why you think this connection between spirituality and aging is so intense, especially at this age.
Oh my gosh. First of all, not everybody is asking questions about the meaning of life, because so consider yourself fortunate if you are, because there are many people that are consumed with survival issues.
That's very true.
Kind of look younger or things like that. It takes a certain amount of maturity and awareness, and it's really begging that you're going to be on this journey that I'm talking about if you are asking those questions. So, congratulations to you and your community. Well, the bottom line is that if you're not in denial about aging, then you're going to be grappling with the shadow side. And there's tough stuff that many of us are confronting and being forced to deal with, whether it's the death of friends or parents, illness, loss, diminishment of all kinds, and obviously, ultimately, our own mortality. So if you read the mystics and if you read philosophers and spiritual guides and wise elders, they all have something in common. And that is that somehow they have made peace with the diminishment, loss, and mortality. So I know you have your degree in comparative religion, and mine is history and critical theory of religion. So we both have, probably at a pretty young age, realized that there was more dimensions to life than just what is presented on the surface.
Yes.
So here's the good news. For those of us who have been lifelong seekers, maybe we've tried Zen Buddhism, or we've, tried different religions and spiritual practices or whatever. You don't have to do anything once you're 60, because aging is a spiritual path.
Yes. Tell me about that. I mean, what are the qualities, maybe it's the opportunities that are there for us? What makes us different in our 60s that makes a spirituality more accessible to us? What is it that happens, do you think?
Well, I don't like what I have to say, because that's why it's the shadow side of things. But
yes.
When you think about all the major religions, they all say the same thing. They say that spirituality and mystical awareness comes out of a loss of ego, letting go of old identities and identifications, dealing with change and challenge, confronting limitations and mortality. So, in Christianity, they called it the dark night of the soul.
Yeah.
But in Buddhism, they have a place of the void, this eternal place of darkness, and in Judaism they have this thing in Hasidic, the mystical Judaism, the Ein Sof.
Right.
They all have this place of where everything you've been has let go of you. It's released you. Is nice putting it. and so why is it that all these religions and mystical practices honor that place of letting go? It's because that's where two things happen. Number one, the status quo has the least hold on you, so you're most able to make bigger changes in your life. But you also can't fake faith anymore. You either have it or you don't.
Yes.
So it's a real test.
It's actually interesting as you're talking, I'm thinking about something we talked about earlier, which is that as you get older, there are gifts that are given to you that don't look like gifts. I mean, the gift of loss, for example, does give you an awareness of your mortality or the fragile nature of life. So in a way that's very sad, and it's super hard to deal with, because you've lost someone or lost something. But on the other hand, it's a gift. It gives you an awareness. You can go deeper in yourself. And I think you said also something about when you're rejected. A lot of women in our community are 60 years old. They've had all kinds of life experience, and that even rejection gives you an opportunity to get to your essence.
Right. When I, I encountered, from my book, Fierce with Age, that I channeled 11 truths. And one of them is that others' rejection is my freedom.
Yes. I love that.
Yeah. That's what I was really saying there. I don't think of them. I don't personally use the terminology gifts, because if loss or rejection is a gift, I want to know if God takes returns.
That's actually really good. I have to remember that. I have to be so careful with you with the words that I use, because you are just so precise, but it's true. They're not gifts in that traditional sense, but there may be surprises or.
But what I prefer to think of is that you can turn anything into good.
Yeah.
That with a well-developed spiritual life and faith in God, that you can find the goodness or the what's next, regardless of what comes your way.
Mm-hmm. And so tell us, in your opinion, what this journey looks like. I know we talked a little bit earlier about the myth of Joseph Campbell, the hero myth, where the hero this is in Greek mythology, Asian mythology, runs all the way through of where a person, a hero, goes into this situation where they're in an unknown world and they have to deal with certain things. How would you describe the spiritual journey that women go through in aging?
Oh, wow. That is
Where does it start? What does it look like? Because you've done it. I know your book talks about this. So it's very powerful.
First of all, my name in Hebrew means joy. And I was born believing that I deserved having joy in my life. So whatever's happened to me in my life, I haven't accepted it. I've always tried to figure out, okay, well, this is a challenge or an obstacle. Where's the joy? Mm-hmm. So, that to me is a nicer motivator than, I've had a crisis. How do it's okay to say I've had a crisis. How do I deal with it? The corner that I turned here was that I think that when I was in my 40s and 50s, I was a spiritual person, but I thought of spirituality as something that would solve problems. It's like, I didn't have the car I wanted. Yes. I would use positive thinking and God would give me a car. Honestly, there's some of that happens before the big stuff starts happening to you that doesn't feel so good, Because when I had breast cancer, I couldn't sort of do that positive thinking anymore. I had to really go a lot deeper with it. But to me, there was a huge difference between facing breast cancer and growing old. I was facing breast cancer. I became deeply spiritual, and I did pray to God, and I did feel God's grace. That's the only way I can put it. But I could pray and hope to get better, to recover. Growing old is not something that we can
recover from.
No. And I love Jane Marie Peebles, who's a wonderful speaker and writer. She says a lot of us use journey as a metaphor for aging. She prefers the term pilgrimage, because journey implies that you just keep going on, whereas pilgrimage has an end point. It's sort of a little bit more finite. And as I said before, that really deepens your spirituality when you really have to come to terms with mortality, not as a theoretical, but as this is how many years I have left. Deepen you if you let it. And the way you let it deepen you is you have to feel all the negative feelings about it, and hopefully seek out teachers and websites for companionship and spiritual support. And I'll say as an aside, our churches are doing a terrible job, because they're all churches and synagogues, and they're all catering to young families and young people. It's notorious that, women age out of the churches after giving so much to the churches and end up in an institution somewhere or a community, and the rabbi or the priest or minister never goes to visit them.
Yeah. Well, it's very interesting that you say that, because I think that I was listening to another talk that you gave, and you were talking about your religion. I mean, you obviously mentioned Judaism and Christianity, but I think that or would you agree that your religion, when you're in your 60s, becomes bigger than that? It becomes more connected to all the threads that are the same, like you said, the loss of ego, the sense of I don't know, just prioritizing the important things in life. So, I mean, what are some of the qualities what are the qualities in your mind of a spiritual person, not a religious person?
Yeah, I was going to say, I would say my spirituality becomes more important, not necessarily my religion. Yes. I have to pick and choose for my religion.
Yes.
I look for somebody who is, I would say, fully alive, which means that they're not motivated primarily by fear or anger or greed. The 7 sins still work quite nicely. That there's some higher ideal that is motivating them, other than what other people are thinking of them, or doing good enough or whatever, and that they're interested in issues or questions of meaning and purpose. That there's more than just making yourself happy or gratifying yourself or whatever. Legacies, I think, somebody that's concerned about their legacy. You don't have to believe in God to be a spiritual person, but you do have to believe that there's something larger than your own ego. I would say that's probably, for me, the defining quality. And and so once you made that shift, then you start to look for and draw in relationships and teachings and books and things like that you can learn from and be inspired by.
No, it's really fascinating that you've said that, because as I was listening to the definition or this description that you just gave, I kept thinking about things that we've talked about in the community as being important. And all the things you've said are the things that the older women over 60 are thinking about in terms of, doing things for, not just for themselves, but prioritizing themselves, prioritizing their growth, not worrying about what other people think. And there's a great, this whole concept of the good girl, letting go of the good girl syndrome and just defining good in terms of your own lens on the world rather than other people's lens. Is that making any sense?
And turn it around too. It's not just not being a good girl anymore. It's finding role models. I have found women in their 80s and 90s have shown me how you can look in a way that society reviles, but have an unprecedented level of joy that any of us would, I would say, die to have. I don't want to use that shadow.
Yes.
Seriously, I know most women in their 80s and 90s are not that happy because, they still are buying into old images. It's just the last generation didn't have the opportunities that we've had.
Yeah.
Our generation, and a few people from the older generation are way showers who are discovering the joy and the freedom that comes from embracing the shadow and the light. And we've been working on it all of our lives. So, why should aging not be a culmination for us?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, I was just thinking as you're talking, what is the myth that we want society to have of older women? What is the definition that, instead of being, don't look for adventure, not looking for new things, anti-technology, all those things. What is the myth that you think we should perpetuate?
Oh my gosh. Well, I think it's all around us. And I think it's historically always been there. There's been, there's a huge tradition of wise women from the Bible on up. You think about the woman who fetched Moses from was a Pharaoh's daughter
from the river. Yeah,
there are really cool women out there. Of course, she wasn't necessarily old, anyway.
But she was wise.
Yeah, she was wise.
So I think wisdom is obviously for me personally, that is my goal. And it's not just wisdom in terms of, inner sense of self. It's also wisdom about the world. I mean, we've got so many wonderful things to be curious about and to learn about. And I know you've talked about this in terms of living or aging gracefully. And the goal really should be to age just with grace, but ungracefully or disgracefully.
Well, to be fully alive. And
to be,
I don't know what that's going to look like when I'm in my 90s to be fully alive, but I have some role models, and it's really more of our fear of aging than the aging itself. Because if you let the fear of aging impact you when you're in your 60s and 70s, that's the people that get driven by fear, go into denial and try and live a lifestyle that it isn't what they really ever wanted in the first place. So. I think it's really making peace with who we want to be in the far distant future, not just to be a 60-year-old looks like a 40-year-old, but how do I want to be when I'm 90? When I certainly am not playing the game anymore. And that's work that you have to do now. That's work you do in your 60s and 70s and 80s.
So you've inspired me. I want to be like you when I grow up.
I'm not 90 yet, though.
No, I really do admire your attitude. I hope people do take a chance to look at your book, because it tells your journey, and it's a journey that women really in their 60s are on. And I love those last comments that this is the time now. We're going to have another, many years to actualize our lives, and this is the time to be, learning and growing. And what did you say about being whole? I love that quote.
Something along the lines of, we have the opportunity to not only grow old, but to grow whole.
To grow whole. Yeah, I love it. So we could go on about this topic for hours, and we have talked before about it. But what message have you got to end with for the community? What advice would you give for a woman who's maybe a little fearful?
Well, the way I keep myself inspired is by reading the works of mystics, wise women, elders from all eras. And every month I put them in my digest. It's Fierce with Age, the digest of Boomer wisdom, inspiration, and spirituality. FierceWithAge.com. It's free,
right?
And there's there's nothing like having role models, and these are people that are aging with the kind of sense of fulfilling their human potential that I think we're all looking for.
I encourage people to go to your site. It is brilliant and it's very inspirational. Carol, you are fantastic. I've really enjoyed talking with you.
Thank you so much, Margaret.
Thank you so much for your time.